The French president has suggested a host of colorful ideas of how the EU should be changing, including the installation of a Eurozone finance minister, but faces tough opposition from across the bloc to implement them, according to Open Europe policy analyst Leopold Draugut. The so-called Franco-German motor behind the EU has been faltering of late, with cooperation between the two nations not living up to expectations. After a meeting with German Chancellor, Mr. Macron admitted his pro-European reforms cannot be enacted without the help of Berlin, as well as an EU-wide finance minister. Other reforms include a joint Eurozone budget and an institute to oversee the entire bloc's economic policy. Get EU News. Bloc could be hit by anti-EU movements if Emmanuel Macron reforms fail. If Macron fails, euroscepticism in France and across Europe will only grow stronger. Leopold Draugut. However, Germany's new government so far seems unwilling to commit to the compromises necessary to achieve much of this. Mr. Draugut said, despite the pro-European rhetoric struck by Germany's new government, its traditional EU reform red lines on key issues such as debt mutualization haven't moved much. Berlin wants and needs to work with Paris to get reforms going, but so far seems unwilling to commit to the compromises necessary to achieve much of this. Many of Macron's most colorful ideas, such as installing a Eurozone finance minister or creating transnational lists for the European Parliament, are basically dead in the water. Berlin and other Nordic member states want to focus on bread and butter reforms instead, steps that are easy to implement and offer concrete benefits. At the same time, Macron is now looking at European defense cooperation outside of the EU and its PESCO framework. Macron has presented a coherent vision for Europe's future, and laid bare the vacuum that currently exists in German political thinking. If Germany cannot reach a compromise with the most pro-European French president in decades, then with whom could it? If Macron fails, euroscepticism in France and across Europe will only grow stronger. Another of Mr. Macron's proposals to create a European deposit insurance scheme to protect up to €100,000 of savers' deposits across any Eurozone bank has seemingly been shown the door by the German government. France wanted to have the scheme ready to roll out at an EU summit in June, but German MPs are far away from agreeing to use German funds to support the scheme. Ralf Brinkhaus, the deputy head of Mrs. Merkel's CDU/CSU coalition said, "We are so far apart that hardly any results can be achieved at the EU summit in June." Jens Weidmann, a leading candidate to become the European Central Bank's president in 2019, poured cold water on the Frenchman's idea to create a body to monitor bloc-wide financial policy. He said, if this step would undermine the member states' existing right to have a say, it would have to be rejected because then liability and action would diverge, because it's the member states that are providing the guarantees for the risks by the ESM.